program.
Thank you. I think the best thing we do to help the orangutan is make sure they don't watch cable news. They'll change all of their instincts. So count me in for helping the orangutan.
We'll pass that on to the research experts.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So how many people are receiving some form of food assistance due to food insecurity in the world? Do you know, Ms. Power?
At this moment, I'm not going to venture.
Well, I got the
answer
number.
to that. Your staff is better than me.
There are 345.2 million people that participate in some world food program because of food insecurity. That number has doubled since 2020. And I've got my friend from Kansas, and they know how to grow food in Kansas for sure. Senator Coons and myself are really wanting to get ahead of this problem. Do you believe the Global Fund has been effective for AIDS and malaria?
It has been effective, sir.
Okay. Would you be willing to entertain a public-private partnership akin to the Global Fund for food security, where we bring the best and brightest minds throughout the world to work with our government and hopefully others to increase production? This is not the WFP, but to have a more focused approach to increase food production in unstable regions.
I think, Senator, you and I have talked about this a little bit and would love to go into a more detailed discussion with you. In principle, more resources, yes. In principle, private sector involvement at a scale that we don't yet see, okay. Absolutely for it. But if I could just, we do have a number of multilateral funds for food that exist, the Treasury mans.
Are they working?
Yeah, I mean, yes, in fact, I think working, but when one looks and sees so many hungry people, and when one looks and sees what I think we all would all agree is an overweighting of resources toward emergency food assistance instead of food security resilience, which is what you're getting at.
Right. Why has it doubled since 2020?
Well, I don't think it's a question of there not being a global fund. There's a set of factors like
I'm
a
saying,
pandemic.
why is the problem doubled? Why are there 345 million people needing food assistance? That's twice what it was in 2020.
Well, first of all, there's more conflict happening in the world since the end of the Cold War. Second, we're coming out of a once-in-a-century, if not more, pandemic. Third, the intensity of climate shocks and so forth. And our resources are not keeping up. I mean, our Feed the Future...
That's my point. So,
yeah.
What I want the committee to understand, and Senator Coons has been a great partner on this, we have a crisis in the world that's really unbelievable to put your arms around. There are more people receiving food assistance because they can't feed themselves than exists in the United States as a whole. It's doubled since 2020, and it's going to double again. So what I'd like to do with Senator Coons in a bipartisan fashion is to add capability we don't have today, tap into the private sector. There's so many bright minds about how to improve crop yields in different parts of the world that could go to unstable regions, fragile states. And what I want is a global food security program that has metrics, that in 5 years, how much can we increase production in Zambia? Just pick your own country and have a focus of where we set metrics for ourselves and we try to achieve it, that we have private-public money more flexible, more like the MCC, Developmental Finance Corporation, the Fragile State Bill. The one thing I'm proud of in this committee is that we have put new programs on the table that are more metric-based. Has the MCC been a successful program?
Absolutely.
The DFC?
Yes.
The Fragile State Bill?
We're working on it,
right.
To implementation, yes.
Yeah, okay. That's right. We're working on it. So what this committee has done, and I want to thank you for your leadership, and I want to thank all those in the USAID space. You're literally doing the Lord's work, and it's national security in another form. But on the food insecurity space, Elon Musk mentioned somebody asked him, would you give $1 billion to the WFP? And he said, will that solve world hunger? No. But I could tell Mr. Musk, if you and some of your friends could come up with some cash, and if we created a global food security fund, it would make a lot of difference. We would get research over in Oxford and the universities, Kansas and South Carolina and Tennessee, and come up with an approach focused on the most vulnerable areas, particularly in Africa, set metrics, take private, public money, get partners throughout the world, and drive to better food production. Does that make sense to you?
It does. If I may, though, make just a plea as well for bilateral programs. You see those on your travels in an age where the PRC is coming in and causing countries to incur
It's not
huge
exclusive,
debt.
yes.
But given that resources
Yeah.
do not seem to be expanding at the pace of food insecurity, except in the emergency area,
Right.
what you're talking about is much more fundamental and much more important in the long run, which is these investments in people's own ability to grow. Unless the pie gets bigger, you're going to see something that's a global public good come at the expense potentially of some of the bilateral programs. So that's
Right.
what I'd love to work with you on, making sure that doesn't happen.
The bottom line, the bilateral approach needs to be supplemented with something new, because the bilateral approach is not working. The global fund in the malaria aid space did work, right?
But look at the difference between the investments that the United States has made in the global health domain versus those in food. If we would wish to increase our investments, I assure you, even bilaterally, we could bring about far
Yeah,
more substantial
but what
results.
I'm saying is I'd
Yeah.
like to leverage our money.
Yes, I'm
I'd
for
like
leveraging
the
it
global
too.
fund
Yes.
approach because it just wasn't all American dollars. It
Yes.
was the public sector and other countries. So what I want to do is I want to create a global food security fund modeled after the global fund, so we can get other countries helping us help people who are literally starving. We can get the private sector more involved, not less involved, and we can get outcomes that we can measure. So, Mr. Chairman, no matter what happens the next election, who's in charge of this place, I want to try to get everybody on this committee working together, working with the Biden administration, and working with private sector organizations and academic institutions throughout the world to set the infrastructure this year, early next year, for a global food security fund, because if we don't do something, the $345 million can double in the next 4 or 5 years.